again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Good Monday afternoon to you. My name's Josh Manning. I am Deputy Managing Editor for Assignment at the Western Journal. Joining us on the show today, on my left, Michael Austin. He's a reporter for the Western Journal. And on my right, I'm going to call him Director of Operations because nobody actually knows his title, though it does exist.
The one guy who probably does know my title is on PTO right now.
So Director of Operations, Brian Chai. Thank you, fellas, for being here today. We appreciate it. We got an interesting variety of content for you this Monday afternoon. We are going to be talking about police funding in California. We're going to talk about what's happening with defunding. And is defunding actually catching on, or is it maybe the opposite? We're also going to talk about what Ron DeSantis is up to down in Florida, dealing with transgender issues. And Bruce Jenner actually weighed in on this. Like, call him Caitlyn. I do it just out of habit. I still call him Bruce Jenner. Weighed in on this and had some interesting commentary. Brian's going to take that. And then it's heating up out there. Summer is just about here. If you're in Phoenix, it already is here. Yeah. And Joe Biden is wanting to monkey with your air conditioning. So we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But first, before we talk about the air conditioning, let's toss it to Michael and let's talk police funding.
Oh, here we go.
So police departments all across the country getting defunded, over the past year. The NYPD lost $1 billion from their budget. Minneapolis, I think it was $8 million out of their budget. Just, all these police departments, in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, they're like, you know what? Our police aren't doing a good enough job. So we're going to take away all of our money for training and resources. That's how we're going to solve that issue.
That'll make
Yep.
Yeah. And surprisingly, in Sacramento, a liberal city in California, the opposite is happening. They just announced that the police budget will be increased to an all-time high of $165.8 million in the next fiscal year. Now, sorry, that's $165.8 million more on top of the current budget. But yeah, that's like the highest increase that they've had ever. And it's really interesting to just kind of go through here and look at the facts. They're doing this despite the fact that the city has created a Department of Community Response that is meant to deal with like mental health issues and homeless individuals.
The expendable police, right? They're the ones you send in first. They get shot, then the real police.
From what I understand, I mean, I haven't looked into this, but from what I understand from listening to liberals talk about the solutions for this, that would just be a group of social workers going in with no weapons, going, "Hey,
like canaries in a coal mine, sort of." If they go in and come back out, it's fine. If they go in and it's bad, they die. But at least the police then know what they're dealing with.
Yes, and so This is really shocking almost to happen in a California city. And it goes to show that, this defund the police movement seems to be slowing down a little bit. And do you guys think that this trend will continue? Are we going to see more police budgets go back up after we had a whole year of just destroying and, defunding the police? Yeah. Or, are we just going to see this? Is this an outlier?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. We ran a story, a few months ago. It was right after one city, I can't remember which one it was, defunded their police or did some amount of defunding. And I think it was a city councilman got mugged or something, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the city council began asking why there was not enough police coverage.
I think that was Minneapolis, wasn't it?
It may have been. Yeah. I am terrible about remembering details like that, but something along those lines. I don't know, man. You kind of think where that decision goes, so goes the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, if they continue to try to actually get rid of the police, that's going to absolutely destroy these metro areas that are already in bad shape. Mm-hmm. And so, purely out of a sense of survival, I would think that they would come around on this and ultimately increase funding again, and then find some backdoor way to do it. Mm-hmm. Issue a bunch of grants for community relations or something, then funnel that into the police department, outsource it to the police departments or something. I don't know. They'll find a remarkably inefficient way to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you if you want to keep control of your city, which apparently some Democrats don't, Portland, for example.
Yeah.
But if you want to keep control of your city, I don't know how you do it without a police force.
Yeah, I think because of the pragmatic nature of a police force, like there is a very real, tangible function to what they do in our community. I think that defund the police will actually probably die sooner than later. But not to be too positive here, I actually think that's not so much like hey, we need police. I think it's more of the people at the top of groups like Black Lives Matter. I disagree with them on virtually every fundamental level, but at the very least, I kind of respect the hustle. Like they have not.
No, they've
They hustle, and by that, and I mean that in the most pejorative sense possible. But I think there's a new grift for them to latch onto, because it feels like after the Chauvin, where I think we all talked about in the office.
The human sacrifice?
Yeah, after
Yeah.
Chauvin was essentially the scapegoat for every bad
Yeah.
cop ever.
Yeah.
It feels like some of the whole thorny issue was defanged a little bit, and I think we're gonna just keep heading in that direction. So I think just as a matter of survival, like far left groups, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they have to find a different grift. They have to find a different shtick, to peddle.
That feels right to me right now. I wonder what will happen at the next white cop shoots black guy
Yeah.
case. When that's going to happen at some point.
Well, right now, is it the Brown family in North Carolina? Like I think that was the one that started with the audio that, like, you heard the police or someone say, "Oh, he shot him in the back." So they're investigating that. Yeah. So there's that. But even that, like, it feels like a lot of these stories have lost some of that momentum. Like that's just how it
Well,
feels to
yeah,
me.
I feel
I
like
agree.
that momentum was sustaining, and it was really helping the defund the police movement. And then, they just can't help themselves. They keep going after these cases where the cops are clearly in the right. Like Micaiah Bryant, after that whole situation happened. And we still have like really mainstream people on the left saying that the cop should be charged with murder in that case.
She was
and
having
stuff
a
like that.
bad day.
Just,
Was having a bad day. Who among us hasn't tried to stab someone when he's having
look,
a bad
white
day?
kids stab each other with knives
All the
the
time.
time.
All the time.
The fact that we're killing black kids over it, racism. But
I'm just mad at all the cultural appropriation. Who use swords? Samurais. So I'm mad about all the cultural appropriation going on here.
Yeah.
But the point I was making was like, people see that the Micaiah Bryant thing was clearly the cop was in the right, and the left keeps pushing it, and then when people see that, they go, the defund the police movement is full of crap. Like this, none of this is going to be good for us, and so then this happens.
So maybe that's reality.
Yeah.
Catching up with all of it. I mean, it was this, to the people who are involved in it, it was this great idea. Oh, defund them. Oh, we'll create paradise. And then they began to realize, hey, this is
What
stupid.
Pandora's box
Yeah,
entailed.
I think one big trend we've seen over the past 2 years when everything got hyper politicized was that the left, like, they'll get a huge cultural win, and then they'll just try to take it to the next level, and
They
then they just
overplay their hand.
totally lose.
Yep, they
They
absolutely
lose
overplay their
everything.
hand.
Yeah, and in the meantime, a few of the folks who were the kind of the power behind it, they move into overwhelming majority white neighborhoods,
Yeah.
into million or multi-million dollar homes, and they've kind of got.
So they live next to
They've
you?
got it. Yeah, right. If real estate prices keep going up, maybe I don't know. Yeah, so a lot of the people who sort of started the grift, I think, they're profiting from it.
Oh, yeah.
And why keep working if you can retire, right?
Yeah, and if we don't see this trend continue, if we don't see more police departments to continue to get more funding, what I think is likely to happen is a lot of these big liberal cities are just going to become, havens of violent crime, and people are going to run out of there. And all the best cities, all the best places in the country will either be, progressive ones like this that actually support their police, or Republican run counties and states. So.
Yeah, small.
Yeah.
And in the countryside, small towns, rural areas. And I think I said it on the podcast last week. It's always just amazing to me that the people calling the country a racist, crime-ridden trash heap are the ones who are living in Democrat-run cities, and the people they blame for that status are the people who live in very clean, very safe countryside and rural communities and suburbs. It is so backward. It's like China chiding us about environmental issues. They are. What's the amount? Have either of you guys seen the figure on the amount of waste plastic they're responsible for?
China?
No. Yeah, I think it's like 90 or 95% of all of that plastic you hear about in the ocean. Guess where that's coming from? Yep. That's China. That's not the U.S. The U.S.'s portion is just tiny. But then they blame it on Americans. They blame it on Westerners. Just the way the left blames everything on conservatives and evangelicals.
It's Americans
and rural people.
Yeah, it's Americans who are responsible of cleaning up the earth, even though proportionally it makes you're making a fairly small group of people do most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. We're stuck cleaning up their mess. Doesn't that sound familiar? I want reparations from the Chinese, darn it.
Yep.
All right. So
I probably have a case.
Shifting, you do have a case, man. The way they're vicious to everybody, and well, we won't get into it. All right. So that's the police. That's defunding. Let's shift over and talk about what Ron DeSantis is up to in Florida, along as far as transgender issues go, and then we've got a Jenner dogleg to the right on this whole too. So
yes,
tell us
we
about
do.
it.
So the big story is Ron DeSantis, Republican governor of the state of Florida, deciding he signed an order basically barring biological males from competing in girls' high school sports. Yeah. The announcement itself was met with what you would expect. People on the far left. Oh, this guy's a bigot. He hates. He hates girls and he hates boys, apparently.
That is remarkable. Yeah. That's very impressive.
Conservatives, I think, I'm obviously a little biased, but I think justifiably so, laud that decision. Like, it is, I'll be the first to admit, I think it's a very tricky subject. But when it comes to, like, sports, particularly sports, which, I've often heard described to me, sports is one of the last few true meritocracies in America.
Yeah.
And given that, it's like, well, are you whittling away at the definition of a meritocracy if you're allowing biological males to compete in girls' sports and all this hubbub? What I wanted to ask you guys, and Mike, I'll kick this over to you because I know you've written about this before, but just sort of like, what's the end game for the left when it comes to like really pushing for having biological boys and girls sports? Like what's the upside to this fight?
Well, as is the case with most of the issues that they push, they don't know where the end game is. They have this imaginary place in their heads, and they don't realize what's actually going to happen.
Like the dog that finally catches the ice cream truck. Yeah. What does he do with it once he catches it? Yeah.
So what they're aiming for, what they think legitimately that there's no biological differences, there's no advantages, and if there are, we could just get rid of those with some hormone therapy or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's just not the case. Where this ends in reality is with men dominating all of men's sports and then men dominating all of women's sports.
I was hoping that's where you were going with this. We had a fantastic conversation about this in the newsroom not long ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got excited.
No, that's it. I mean, not every... So when a transgender athlete, a biological male joins women's sports, some men are just like not very good athletes. So sometimes they don't, get first place. But, any man that's trained just as hard as like a woman that's comparable, he will have an advantage over her times out of 100 times. So, the more of these guys you get into women's sports, the more likely they are to dominate it on a whole. So
Yeah, it becomes an arm race,
Yeah.
right? One
Yes.
team gets one big dude.
yeah, exactly.
Every other team
there's
wants
there's
one,
those
and
photos,
then you get one more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the
the
viral
disproportionate
photo.
heights.
There's
and
like
stuff.
a 7-foot guy.
We did
joined
that a couple years ago, yeah.
a women's college basketball team.
So,
Yeah,
Josh, but then why though? Like, I get what Mike's saying, like, what they are doing, but like,
Yeah.
I guess me just personally, I struggle to see, what they can gain from this fight. Like I get the point, but I just don't see the gains.
So I tend to think of there's some point where you transition from political explanations to psychological explanations to spiritual explanations, and I think I end up with a spiritual explanation at this point because it's so bizarre. In Romans, the Apostle Paul said, "In professing themselves to be wise, they became fools," and the post-enlightenment arrogance that's out there. That we have discovered. We discovered science in the Enlightenment. Science has made us all powerful, and now we can actually change the makeup
our
of
own
human
gods.
beings. We can
Yeah.
be our own gods.
Yeah.
I think that's a spiritual issue at play here. Now, Mike, you and I were talking just before the show started about like different categories of transgenderism. And there's some that's well, you were talking about. Explain that to the folks.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of coverage on transgender issues, and from what I've seen, there are several different types of transgender people. There's severely mentally ill people that are dealing with gender dysphoria, and they probably need some urgent psychological care. There's people that are well adapted to society, but they still do have gender dysphoria. So nothing. You wouldn't find many additional mental health issues with them, but they do see themselves as the opposite sex/gender. And then there's people that just want to cash in on the social gains that can be had from identifying as transgender. As soon as they do it, they get all this new attention. Usually you'll see it from kids that have autism or even Down syndrome. You'll see it with people that aren't very popular. All of a sudden they become transgender, and they're the talk of the town. So
That's a really good point, because that just made me think, like, not once do you ever. It's always like kind of a lavish announcement when someone is announcing that they are transitioning.
They're very brave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're very brave.
Yeah, because I was actually just thinking about it. The most recent high-profile example that comes to mind is Elliot Page,
Yes.
formerly
Ellen
Page,
yeah.
actor/actress,
actress,
But with Elliot Page, like what he wants to do, that's his business. I get it, but there was the announcement, there was the fawning media coverage.
Yes.
There's always it's almost like ceremonial at this point. Like what's coming. Anytime someone's like, "I am a man/woman," despite being born a man/woman. Anytime anyone says that, it feels like you get the media lauding them, then you get the media warning about all the evil, crazy conservatives, and then when conservatives speak out, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's almost formulaic.
In a world where we're getting farther and farther away from Christ, and there's no meaning, nothing matters. Having an identity that makes people look at you in a special way, that can kind of, for people they feel like that can fill that hole of meaning that's within themselves. But
It gives them a definition.
But what we've seen, what I would argue is that inevitably that's going to fail, and they're the same person underneath, no matter how they label themselves. So
That's a good point, Mike. So we've kind of we've gently broached this subject, kind of sidestepped a little bit, but I'll just straight up ask you guys: is like transgender rights, transgender just competing in sports, like just that the whole umbrella of issues that comes with transgenderism, is this a winning issue for conservatives? And my follow-up to that is, or actually, what made me think of that, of whether or not this is a winning issue for conservatives, an important issue for conservatives, is because of Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Olympic gold medalist Bruce Jenner, announced they're enrolling in the recall election. I couldn't think of the word
Yeah,
recall.
recall,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. I was like, I know where I need to get to, but I don't know how to get to that word.
Yeah.
So anywho, yeah, with Caitlyn Jenner participating in the recall, it made me think, and I wanted to bring it to the show because I don't think it's a simple issue at all. I think it can be a complicated issue with different sides, and I want to get your guys' take on it.
So is the question is standing against transgender, say the transgender movement, is the question, is that a winning issue for conservatives?
Yes. And you can define winning however you'd like, but just, in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
You think it's
the problem that conservatives often have is we can't boil down our issues to one, easily digestible sentence that people are like, oh yeah, that's the truth. When it's something you can just see with your eyes, oh yeah, this is the right answer and that's the wrong answer, that's a winning issue for us. Reality has done all of the work for us here. So
yeah, exactly. A is A.
Yeah.
We were joking the other day, like, what would it take for you to not be able to tell the sex of a baby you're delivering? You would have to be a blind OBGYN with leprosy.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to not be able to see and not be able to feel.
Yeah.
It's manifestly true. And I do think there is something to be said for standing up for reality. There is something to be said for standing up for... science is not really the word for this. Reality is a better term for it.
Yeah.
It's not like it's well, I guess it's testable. You could look at body part association with chromosomes, but it's essentially just reality. And I think there are people out there who I think are terrified to say, no, there are two genders.
Yeah.
To just say what everybody's thinking. And I think if we take a stand on reality, that will be some amount of comfort for those folks and provide a place for them to
And
go.
when those people, they see their daughters losing out on opportunities due to unfair advantages other people have, when they see, maybe their younger relatives, their parents transitioning them, when that's definitely a form of child abuse. We see these things and they're so obvious, and people might not speak out against it, but it's going to get to a point where they're going to vote against it. And I really think that we are fastly approaching that, and a lot of these things are going to be headed in the opposite direction.
Ever think about this just hit me, the weirdness of kind of the crunchy green leftist group that wants no antibiotics, no hormones in their chicken or in their beef or whatever, but they're totally willing to pump that stuff into our kids.
Child, yeah.
That's kind of a weird. That's kind of a weird thought, right?
I mean, it says a lot. I mean, it's very
I
telling.
think it is, and I think you're right. It's essentially Douglas Murray says that when you come out as non-binary, you're coming out as "look at me." And I think there's some amount of that at play in all of this. And I think that was probably the case with homosexuality before. That was the previous iteration of this.
I think.
You're automatically described as brave, and it was exciting. And then all of a sudden you're afforded a whole bunch of new protection. That's an interesting thought, too.
Yeah.
Consider if you are a white, small c Christian, you immediately go from oppressor class to oppressed. You get all of the protections of the victim that come with victimhood, and all you have to do is just say, well, I think I've decided I'm the opposite sex. And not only do you get all those protections, you get celebration.
Yeah, I think just to put a little bow on my topic, my biggest concern is actually just a can of worms that will be opened up. People always say, oh, slippery slope fallacy. Well, we've seen time and time again.
There are plenty of slippery slopes.
It is a slippery slope for a reason. But with this stuff, it's like what happens when I don't know. I'm just gonna think of the most ridiculous example I can. What if someone identifies as an endangered species and refuses to be evicted? They refuse to leave their home because they identify as an endangered species. Like what?
Yeah.
Like
I'm
just
a
saying,
snail darter.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, stuff like this starts becoming possibilities as the further we, go into this understanding.
Well, yeah, if you enshrine into law that like a man can be a woman and a woman can be man, there is a slippery slope there. You could start arguing all sorts of things if biological reality is not as important as your personal your personal beliefs and preferences and thoughts. So, yeah.
But on some level, people are aware of the idiocy and capriciousness of this. Yeah. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Benny, what's his name over at
Johnson?
Yeah, Johnson. It might have been him. Or it could have been Crowder. Somebody went out and asked people a few leading questions about, is it okay to identify as the opposite sex or this or that and the other? And they do it on university campus. So, all these idiot kids are, oh, yeah, sure, of course it is. and then he would say, well, I identify as a 5-year-old. How does that work for you? And then they wouldn't know what to do because they realize the limitation of their reasoning and that it's ultimately inconsistent. And people have a really hard time living like that. They have a hard time living in a situation where their claims run counter to reality. And it's just there's some parts of reality that are just so clear, like age or like sex and gender.
I think I will say I don't think I will. One thing I will never be identifying as anytime soon is going to be a air conditioning unit because I'd like to keep Joe Biden's grubby paws off of me.
The most tortured transition there could possibly be.
Amazing.
Or amazing. All right. So, folks, we have already hit the 90s in Phoenix. That's where we live. That's where we do our work from, our writing, our broadcasting, all from Phoenix. It has already gotten hot here. Now, I am guessing most of you in the audience are old enough to remember when the war on air conditioning was waged in the past. If you remember, there used to be these things called CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, and they were in air conditioning systems. Use them. They used Freon, hairspray cans, aerosol cans. All of these things use CFCs. And the government came in, and I think it was through the Environmental Protection Agency, said, "Hey, no way! These things are bad for the ozone. They hurt the ozone. Get rid of them." Well, now phase 2 has arrived. The Biden administration has set a goal to decrease the amount. Okay, so hang on. Sorry, I got out of order. After CFCs, they switched to HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons. All right, that's what we've been working with since then. Now the Biden administration has said, "Hey, we are going to cut hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs. We're going to cut their presence by 85% over the next 15 years." Now, that has repercussions for the single most important thing, well, other than water in the desert, the single most important thing, which is air conditioning. Just truly nothing is safe from the left. Larry Miller, who you've probably seen him in a random movie or doing a guest spot on TV, he used to write for the National Review or Weekly Standard a little bit. He's a conservative comedian. But he used to say, look, if the Earth's got to warm a little bit so I can stay nice and cool in my living room, the Earth's got to take one for the team. Yeah. And I am with him on that. But I wanted to share with you guys before we go a few of the options that are out there.
Oh, boy.
Logan's going to hate that I moved that. Sorry, Logan. A few of the options that are out there. Now, folks, there are 3. There are probably more than 3, but these are the 3 that I came up with. First off, we can get rid of HFCs and we can go to ammonia. Ammonia-based cool. No, I'm serious. This is not a joke. This is not a joke at all. This is serious. You can go to ammonia-based AC units. Now, ammonia has a couple of advantages. One, it is cheaper than HFCs.
Yeah.
It's cheap, so that's nice.
Yeah.
It also is conducive to less expensive refrigeration systems, so the cost of your air conditioning unit
it's sounding good so far.
Might go down. And it releases no greenhouse gases, and no ozone depleting gases either. It's also more efficient than HFCs, but there is a problem.
Oh, no.
Just one?
There are trade-offs with everything, folks. Turns out, as some of you who have been following along at home know, ammonia is highly toxic and can kill you. Now, the odds that it will kill great numbers of people are fairly low. You can smell ammonia out there. It's there's a quality of that in urine sometimes, associated with bats as well. It is also not useful. It can't be used with pipes that are made from copper, brass, zinc, and many other alloys, because in humid or moist regions it will corrode the pipes. So think about all of the changed plumbing that would have to happen, HVAC. Now, there's another option. Hydrofluorolefins. Hydrofluorolefins, not to be confused with midichlorians. Hydrofluorolefins. These, again, no ozone depleting potential, minimal impact on greenhouse gases. A couple of problems with it, though. These things are actually highly flammable, posing a potential risk for explosion if the refrigerant managed to make its way near a flame. So there is actually a case, Daimler Chrysler. Let's see here. If they've been sued, I glanced over this ahead of time. The Chevy, where are you? Is it a Chevy? There is a... oh, no, it's the Ford Focus. The Ford Focus actually already uses this system. And there supposedly may have been an explosion associated with this.
Yeah.
But they're not sure. They're not sure. They've had trouble reproducing it. But the idea of using some... And now look, I mean, we sit on top of gasoline-powered or beside gasoline-powered engines all day long. They're very safe. You know, that could be the case with this. And then I want to give you the very last... I saved the best for last. The last option, this option, it's cheap compared to traditional refrigerants. There's lots of it. It's a byproduct of many industrial processes. There's just one problem with it. It's CO2. Carbon dioxide. You could actually replace refrigerants with carbon dioxide. The thing... we're killing cows because of methane, aren't we? Isn't that why we're getting rid of
cows? Are the methane.
So we're going to get rid of cars. We're going to go to electric cars, but doggone it, they're going to be powered by they're going to use CO2-powered air conditioning systems. Now, none of that is a joke, but all of it is funny. And the point behind it is that Tom Sowell has said before, you know, there are no good or bad decisions in policy or economics. There are only trade-offs. There are trade-offs with everything. Right now, we have less efficient cooling systems than we had in the past. But they do get the job done. It's also not clear in the long run just how much damage continuing to use HFCs would do. Now, there have been estimates that by the year 2100, if we reduce use by 85%, it'll save us about half a degree of warming. The problem with that is that there are UN estimates that say if we eliminated all CO2 by 2100, what's the change? I think it's less than a degree.
Yeah.
So it's first off, the math may not be consistent. Secondly, the point Bjorn Lomborg points out, I think he's a Swedish environmentalist and statistician. It's like, look, the ticket here is not replacing our technology. It's adjusting our technology, so that the prophecies that are out there, which haven't come true yet, will not come true in the future. He estimates it's possible to mitigate the damage that's predicted, and really we would not have to change lifestyles anywhere near like people are predicting. So we've gone through this charade before. Air conditioners don't work nearly as well as they used to, and I fear we're going to take another hit, or we're going to have a worse trade-off where you maybe have ammonia flowing through your home, or
just
CO2,
blows up.
or it
Yeah,
just
just
blows
boom.
up. The midi-chlorians, what were they? The hydrofluorofluorines.
I gotta say,
something like
this is
that.
really interesting to me that they're going with less safe AC units. After we've been told for months now that even one life, if we take
that's
even one
good.
life,
That's good.
that is too much. We got to do
One
everything we
life
can
is too much
to
That's
save
right.
every single life,
That's
except if those lives are dying from ammonia toxicity or their houses blowing up because they have a bad AC unit.
It's so inconsistent. There are two things that are consistent. The part of the left's problems is just wildly inconsistent in application. There are two things that we should be consistent about. One is freedom, rights.
Yeah.
The other is responsibility. All right, that's it. An enormous number of these problems resolve themselves if we arrange ourselves in such a way that we are free, but we are still responsible for our actions. And that's where the more I read, the more I've thought about it lately, I really think, sans spiritual discussion, that's where America has gotten off track. We have focused so much on rights, and we have focused almost none on responsibilities. Rita Joseph writes an op-ed column for us from time to time. She submits op-eds to us from time to time. And she's got one that's going to come out, I think, sometime this week. If not this week, it'll be this weekend. I just read it. Dealing with this and the Derek Chauvin trial, and how the issue, she had one line that stuck with me. The issue is not bad policing. That's not the issue. The issue is that we have adults who refuse to model responsible lifestyles for their children. Yeah. And that is the problem with so much of this. We have emphasized freedom. We have not emphasized responsibility. If there was one thing that the 60s should have been known for, it was probably that. It was nothing but free love, drugs, sex, rock and roll, and no responsibility. And we have not recovered from that.
Yeah, it's true.
So anyway, there you go. That's how you get from air conditioning units to socio-political philosophy. All right, folks, thank you so much. We've gone over a little bit, amazingly, with that ridiculous topic at the end. Thank you so much for joining us here on WJ Live. We are powered by the Western Journal. Go check us out online at westernjournal.com. If you feel like supporting us, if you feel led to support us in ways other than simply reading our articles, which we appreciate, but if you want to support us in other ways, you can go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. Additionally, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to click subscribe. After you click subscribe, a little bell's going to pop up. Click on that bell. That's going to make sure you get notified every time we go live. No shadow banning. That's going to do it for us today. Remember, we are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. For Michael and Brian and all of the Western Journal staff, I'm Josh Manning. We're going to see you Wednesday. Thank you.
Exposition, which is essentially a world fair.
Time to go.
And she was also historic.
Oh, I got an audio version too.
And she was also historic for being the first kind of